Hello, and welcome back to the latest episode of ADHD Generations. I've got my lovely co-host with me here, my mum, Esther Barrett, the person that drags me along through life. And I've got the lovely Gill Jordan here. And yeah, mum will have a little introduction with you.
Oh, Gill, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. We really appreciate it. It's so lovely to see you.
It is a pleasure to be here. Great to hang out with you guys always.
And you've got such an interesting life story. You've got such an interesting journey that you've come on. And I just thought people would be really interested to hear about it. And one of the things that really piqued my interest was the whole relationship that you have with horses. So before we dive in, do you just want to say a few words about like who you are, what you do, where you've come from?
Yeah, of course I can. Yes, hello everybody. It's great to be with you. My name is Gill Jordan. I'm an ADHD coach and trainer, and I connected with Esther over a year ago now, isn't it? I think, and have really enjoyed our relationship and the journey and learning loads together and working together. It's been brilliant. But I started coaching in 2012, so quite a long time ago now. And I started my coaching journey by working with horses in the middle of a field. And I did some training on something called equine assisted learning, which is amazing, incredible way of kind of coaching people with very few boundaries. You've got obviously a bit of health and safety boundary going on there, but it's really very pure coaching in that sense, very non-directive. So you would, let's say, for example, you would do an exercise with your client and you would throw a head collar into the middle of the field and you'd say, right, your job today, go put the head collar on the horse. And then you just send them off. And that's pretty much the only direction you give for the whole session. So that's a little bit crazy. But then what unfolds is the client's journey of how they're going to do that. Are they going to do that? And then you have to sort of ask some questions, prompting them along the way to help them to think it through. But yeah, it's been a fascinating, I absolutely love doing it. I'm not doing it now. I do ADHD coaching on Zoom now, which is a bit different to being in a field full of mud and snow and lots of poo. Sorry about that, if you're squeamish. But that's the reality. But no, yes, I started my coaching journey in the middle of a field.
I'm so fascinated by this, and I hope everyone else is as fascinated as I am. Disclosure, I have started riding lessons. Started about 4 months ago, I think. So my first proper good go at learning how to ride a horse. And they are very, very big. And so if you threw a head collar in the middle of the field and told me to put it on a horse, I'd probably be terrified in the first instance.
Yeah.
So how do you help them to kind of overcome all of those emotions that they may be having?
Well, I think it comes with a lot of compassion and holding space. And so I'm not ever forcing anybody to do anything. The suggestion is there, off you go. And then you kind of listen to what the client is saying. So they may look at you as if to say, and what are my instructions here? That was the response I got a lot of the time. And there's a lot we can learn from that, isn't there? A lot of the time we do want to have instructions for everything in life, so we know we're doing it properly. And especially for those of us with neurodivergence, we tend to be more people-pleasy on the people-pleasy side, myself included. So we want to know that we're doing it right, and also we don't want to upset the horse, so we're considering that. But all of those things are really good observations, because what you get to see then with your client is things like they're looking outside themselves. They're looking to make sure the horse is safe. They're looking to make sure they're doing it right. They don't want to do anything to harm themselves or the horse. And so you can kind of reflect that back to the person. That's really good that you're asking that, but you don't answer the question. So, then they kind of go, right, okay, it's great that I'm not doing that, but what do I do? And then I'll kind of say, well, it's really up to you to choose what you do next. And I mean, it's really hard to get used to it, because it feels like you're pushing them off a cliff all the time in a way, but in a safe way, because you're just literally pushing them to the edge, and they have to jump at some point, And so eventually you might find that people would go, right, I'm not getting anything out of her. I've got to go and figure this out myself. And they might go off and pick up the head collar, which by now is in a mangled pile of tanglements in the middle of the field. And they sort of pick it up and go, and a lot of people had never seen one of these before. They don't know which end up it goes, or never mind how it goes on the horse. And so they might pick it up and go, right. And they try and figure out the head collar first a lot of the time. So they turn it upside down and all the ways. And then they might walk over to my horse. And my horse, depending on what's going on inside the person, that my horse may stand still, or it may decide not to stand still, and it may decide to walk away. And when I was learning how to be an equine assisted learning coach, I would feel pressure thinking, why is my horse walking away? He's got to stand still, otherwise this isn't going to be a session, So it's there's a lot of thinking going on and a lot of things happening, even though not many words are being spoken. So it kind of all has this undercurrent that kind of plays out. But I think it was Winston Churchill who said this quote, "There is something about the outside of a horse that is good for the inside of a man." And Esther, I don't know if you can attest to this in your experience with horses. There is something very special about standing beside something that's so huge, depending on the horse. Even little ones are huge, though, in their spirit. They just are. Have you met a Shetland pony? People who have Shetland ponies will be laughing right now because they can be really feisty. There's something really special about standing next to a horse. It's a huge animal that could squash you, in an instant. And yet often they choose to stand and allow us to be part of their herd. And so I don't know if you find that when you're riding, Esther. Does it just change you when you walk up to the horse? Do you find a shift in your thinking, your feeling?
Everything changes. From the very first day that I decided I was going to have riding lessons, and I went to the stable half an hour early, and they said, and they gave me, I had a little bit more weight on me at the time, so they gave me the biggest horse in the stable, who's also the nicest, calmest horse in the stable. He's called Ted. So they said, right, go and brush Ted then. So they gave me these brushes and just said, you go 3 times like this, and then once on there, and then 3 times brush. So I was in the stable with Ted, was my first experience, and he's ginormous, like a blooming Shire horse or something. Yes. So there I am in there brushing him, and I'm like, how do I get round the other side? I don't want to freak him out. So they're like, put your hand on his bum and just kind of scoot around the back, and I'm just talking to him the whole time. And his head is, this big. And he looks at you. He's only looking at you with one eye because he's like a whale. Absolutely gigantic. So absolutely, and the joy of it is that when I go and for that 2 hours that I'm there, which is 45-minute lesson and the beginning and the end, I'm just completely in that moment.
Yes.
It's just me and Ted, or now I've started riding another one called Bear, who's slightly bigger.
Wow. I love that. It is, though. It does. It brings you right into the moment, doesn't it? Because they're so massive. They're present. You can feel their presence as soon as you walk up to them, and you can only pay attention to them because I guess our kind of, fight and flight kicks in a little bit, like, is this going to run me over? What's going to happen? And I've seen people pinned up against, that size can teach us a lot. I've seen people pinned up against, a stable wall who were very timid and very, not sure of their own boundaries. But then as the air starts to get squashed out of them, they figure out they have to go, hang on a minute, no, stop. And they have to push the horse away. And that takes quite a lot of skill to do that, and quite a lot of chutzpah. You kind of got to go, right, come on, no, that's enough, move, And so there's something in their presence, in that large presence, that just is quite arresting, I think, for humans. And it makes you stop and pay attention, because you don't know what's going to happen next. They're a live animal at the end of the day, aren't they? And they're slightly wild. I mean, more tame now, I suppose, if they're in a stable and things. But, they're wild animals, really.
Lewis, you had an experience of horse riding. When I took one of my very few experiences of horse riding when I was younger. I took Lewis horse riding when you were, I don't know how old you were.
I don't know, like 5 or 6 or something.
How was it for you?
It was, I just, it wasn't very comfortable. That's the only thing I remember about being on the horse. and going, I want to get off. And then Mum was off with the adults in the front of the hack pack, I guess, or whatever you call it.
The hack pack. I love that.
Yeah.
Hack pack, Lewis. That's brilliant. I love that.
And then I was at the back with like the children, and I was obviously complaining the entire time, going, my area's hurt. I need to get off. And they were going, no, your mother's paid. You're not getting off. And I was going, please. They were going, no, we've still got another hour to go. And I was going, oh, God.
Oh, my
Please make it stop.
Yeah. I can't believe you did that. That's really cruel, isn't it? Oh, yes.
It was an experience, though, so,
I think, well, yes. Did you like being around the horses?
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it so much, to be honest. I mean, I when I did animal care in college, we were right next to the equestrian section. So we saw a lot of horses, and I was near horses a lot. And I also dated a couple of the equestrians who also then had horses. So I did spend quite a lot of time around horses in college. Never on them, though. Never on them. Only by them.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. When I got my horse, I wasn't riding him. I didn't ride him at all. And so you can do riding within equine assisted learning, but it's not required. Most of the work is done on the floor. And for me, I had a horse riding accident when I was younger, and it happened right before my first son came along. And I was this far from a fence post, and I was cantering through some slalom poles in a riding school, and the horse was going to go to the left, and I was going, no, you're not. You're going to go to the right. But their gate was going, no, I'm going left. And then at the last minute, they went, oh, all right, then I'll go right. And I came, did a whole full spin in the air and landed very close to a fence post. So that really gave me a lot of perspective. And I was kind of like, Jill, you're going to be a mum. You really can't, be doing this kind of thing, because if you're injured, you're kind of out the game, And so, horses are wonderful. You hear a lot of people have accidents. So for me, coming back into doing the coaching with horses, I really wanted to do it on the ground, because I wanted to have that kind of level of safety in my life. And so I never rode them. And people used to find that quite odd, I think, because you tend to hear of people horse riding, don't you? And it's all horse riding, the focus on the riding. But actually, I was on the ground. But that was as powerful for me, if not more powerful, than actually riding them. Because just spending time with them, like Esther was saying, if you go to groom a horse, if you're feeling, let's say you're feeling anxious that day, the horse might not stand and let you groom them. Because horses are herd animals and they're prey animals. And so horses are designed to kind of suss out what's going to keep them safe and what's going to harm them. And so if you're feeling a bit anxious and a bit unsettled, they might feel that, or they will feel that, and they might go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not quite sure. I'm just going to move away for a minute until I figure it out. And so you can learn, and I mean, heaven help us if we're on the top of the horse when we're feeling anxious, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, I think be on the ground, and you can learn as much. Horses kind of mirror what's going on within you, which is quite a fascinating thing to experience. And in my time, I coached lots and lots of people, from children to adults, I had school groups coming out, working with a lot of children with neurodiversity, and working with a lot of people with anxiety and depression. And so, obviously we all feel different on different days, depending on what's happening. I even had a couple of people come out who were petrified of horses. And they said, Jill, will you help me to not be scared of horses? And so I had one lady came and she wouldn't get out the car. You could drive right up to the side of my field and park, and she just couldn't get out the car. And I was like, come on, let's go. So I started with her in the car, sort of talking to her about it and explaining that I had a human area, and then that was fenced off, and then there was the field, so there was two gates before she even got into the field. So I eventually managed to encourage her out of the car, and we stood at the first gate looking over, and the horse couldn't even get to her because we were on the gate of the human section, and then we gradually worked our way up, and eventually she was brave enough to go into the field. And we just stood. That's all we did, and the horse, there was a couple of horses in the field. They kind of milled about, and eventually she groomed my horse, which was amazing. I mean, it took quite a few weeks, but it was amazing. And again, she was very mindful of the size and the power. And I think, well, that's great. You need to be mindful of that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that. It's good because they can squash you in a second. And, let's be clear. If a wild plastic bag came into the field and frightened them to death, they're going to get out of the way. And if you're in the way, you are safer than the plastic bag. So you are going to get floored. That's how horses work. So, yeah, there's a lot they can teach us. And the other good thing about horses, I learned a lot when I was doing my equine assisted learning. The other thing that they can teach us is about a felt sense of safety. And when we experience things that are challenging or scary, and for us as humans, traumatic, horses are very good at kind of A, checking that out, and then B, regulating themselves again afterwards. And that was huge. And I think for a lot of my clients, that was quite a big lesson for them that they learned just by watching. So they would, let's say you've got a horse in a field, right? And a red bucket is put in the field that they've never seen before. And it rattles a bit and makes a noise that they don't understand, okay? So the first thing they'll do is look at it. I mean, you'll see, boom. They'll be like, what is that? And what is it doing in my field? Is it going to eat me? Am I safe? That is literally their life, right? So they're looking at the red bucket, and then the horse will decide whether it's going to move a bit closer. But it will move, right? So that's the first thing to say, is it will move. And it'll move around in a semicircular motion, kind of, but with one eye, like you were saying, Esther. It's one whale eye on that item. And it will move, and it will turn around and look with the other eye until it will gradually move closer and closer and closer, keeping itself safe all the time. If that bucket moves or wiggles, it will move away again. The horse will move away. It's not risking anything. But eventually, let's say the bucket stays still and is pretty chilled. It's not, a terrible bucket that's going to eat them. The horse will eventually get to the bucket, and then it might paw it with its hoof and kind of knock it over and see what happens. But be ready to run away, if it was going to eat them or something. And then it might eventually put its nose down and give it a little nudge or snort at it as if to say, well, you're no big bucket, are you? I'm. And they'll do something like that. And eventually they'll go, do you know what? It's just a bucket, people. It's okay. There's nothing to see here. I'm going on with my life. And so all of the time they've been recircling is what it's called when they go up to the bucket. Their adrenaline's high. They're in fight or flight. They're ready to go. They could turn on a penny and be off to safety. But then as soon as they go, oh, guys, it's only a red bucket. It's all right. There's nothing wrong. They gradually lower their adrenaline. And they do that by yawning or snorting or just running away and getting it, literally like shaking it off almost, And so by doing that, within minutes, they're back to eating grass again as if nothing's ever happened, And I think that's quite incredible because as humans, I don't think all of us can do that particularly well. And so that was a real life lesson for me. Just because the red bucket's in the field all the time, as soon as you realize it's safe, well, you're okay. You can go regulate yourself. But how you regulate yourself, we all have to, as humans, develop our strategies. Horses have their strategies. They know what to do instinctively. But as humans, I think a lot of time we've unlearned the strategies to keep ourselves safe. And I think sometimes we have to relearn those and teach ourselves. I've had to do a lot of work myself personally on what helps to regulate me if I'm feeling dysregulated. What strategies am I going to deploy? So yeah, anyway, I've been blethering for a long time there, but horses are amazing. They teach you loads of stuff.
I'm fascinated.
Yeah, it's really interesting, to be fair. And that's what the podcast is about, to be fair, is to find out information and what you know.
That's good. I'm doing my job. That's good news.
Yeah.
You are doing your job. So this feels like the horse. So back to the original where you started with the equine coaching. So one thing you would have done was put the head collar in the middle of the field and help them figure it out. I nearly put my horse's head collar on upside down the other day. So totally getting the whole challenge of that. So what other things might you do with a person when they're in that environment?
within that? Well, there's a lot of different exercises that you can do, and pretty much anything can be an equine assisted learning exercise. I have a really, really good friend, a close friend of mine, who is in Colorado, and she is still doing equine assisted learning, and she runs a ranch out there, which is a charity. And so we often just laugh and say anything can be an equine assisted learning activity. You know, carrying a bucket into the middle of a field can be that, because you don't know what's going to come out for different people. And a lot of time, you know, people will respond with who they are. So if they are somebody who might have some insecurities or not be very confident, what you will see then sometimes is, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I don't know what to do. You know, and it's all about them and kind of they're worried. And so you can kind of reflect that back to them and say, well, why do you think you're doing it wrong? You know, did I give you instructions of how to do it? No. Okay. So why do you think that's wrong? You know, and there is no right and wrong is the other thing to say. Don't tell all the people that who are going to do EAL, but there is no right and wrong, because it's all about the experience. So myself and my family went to my friend in Colorado a few years ago, and I said, will you do an equine assisted learning session for all of us? Because, you know, it's a while since I've done it, and my kids all grew up around my horse, but now we don't do that anymore, and so sometimes we'll take the opportunity to do a little equine assisted learning session when we're there. So she said, yes, let's do billiards, which I think we call snooker. I think it's American is billiards, isn't it? I think I've got that right. Yeah. And so this was a very elaborate exercise. So basically, there was 2 buckets of poo. We all stood in a line, the whole family. There's 2 buckets of horse poo on either side, right? And then we all stood in a line, and there was like a rectangle on the floor. And she said, right, you have to get the pony in the pocket. And we were in a barn, and so that's all you've got, like literally. And so we had to figure out as a team, but then there are rules. So only one of you can be doing something at any one time, and only that person can talk. So you can't have a conflab, you know, what are we going to do, guys? This, that, and the other. So, and you have to work it out, and you have to stay in the line with the poo buckets. So, I mean, your brain just goes into overdrive trying to think about it. But it was a fascinating exercise because, and what, you know, the way that it played out for us, you know, as adults, we kind of stepped out. There was 3 adults, 2 kids. They stepped out and we were like, right, I know, let's try this, you know. And so when you maneuver everybody and say, right, do this, do that, do that, do that. And I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to, you know, give the game away. We did achieve it, I have to say. But I have to say that was thanks to my daughter, who was amazing, thinking outside the box, completely unconventionally. And she said, let's do this. You know, it took a couple of rounds and she was like, let's do this. And we all went, that's genius. Let's do that. So, you know, it really showed like her leadership qualities and, you know, it was really powerful for her. And then for us, it was really powerful because we were watching the younger generation taking charge and sorting out the problem that we had no idea how to get this horse that just seemed to have a mind of its own and was off left, right and centre, you know. And lo and behold, we got the pony in the pocket. So there can be lots of different things.
I want to know how we got the pony in the pocket.
Well, I can't tell you, but we thought outside the box. That's all I will say. That's all I will say. But yeah, I can't give it away because then if anybody ever does it who listens to the podcast, then they're going to go, oh, I know what to do. We'll just do this. I wish I could tell you. But yeah.
Well, you'll have to tell me afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'll send you to Colorado and you can go try it for yourself. That would be fun. I'd pay to watch that. That'd be brilliant.
That would be fun, actually. It's quite enjoyable.
It's beautiful up there.
All the reasons, though.
Yes, there's lots of reasons in Colorado. I was like, what is going on in this place? You see it everywhere. But there we are. Hey. Yeah, we'll send Lewis. We'll send him on a mission to go over. Yeah. So there's lots of exercises, if that answers your question. But, you know, anything from grooming, you know, simple things. It's not really complex either sometimes. You can have really elaborate exercises. I remember doing one when I was doing my training where I had a horse that I didn't know. And they were on a head collar and a lead rope. And the people said to me, right, Jill, walk around in a circle, and when you're ready, tell the horse to stop, and it has to stop. You drop the lead rope and it has to stop where. And I was like, what? How am I telling a horse to stop? Like, seriously, then it was a massive horse, humongous. And so I was a bit scared anyway. And I was like, oh. So I walked around in circles for ages, talking to myself about it. Right, how are you going to do this? What are you going? Okay, let's think this through. And there's nothing there there's nothing to stop it. It was just, and you have to think on your feet. You have to figure it out. And of course, different things come out of that conversation. And so I would ask questions to the facilitators, and they would not give me any answers, but they would redirect my thinking, or reflect things back. So what you're saying is this, is it? And again, I figured it out in the end. But there was a whole journey of learning to get there. And that's where the beauty is in it, really. So again, no right or wrong answers, but it's just that learning journey.
I love this. I mean, I've known a couple of people. You're one, and I was talking to someone earlier actually who was also just starting, kind of going into equine coaching. And I know it's a thing, but I don't think I've ever really asked the question before, like, what do you actually do when you're actually doing the coaching? I think I was struggling to imagine it, because if it's not riding, like, what is it?
There's so much. There's another one that you can do where you go out into the field and you find, I think it was 3 things that are positive things in your life, 3 things to represent positive things in your life, and 2 things that represent negative things in your life. Well, I mean, that was easy in a pony field full of poo. I was like, come on. So I had to pick it up. That's the only thing. But, you do what you got to do. And so and then you create a little image on the floor with all of the things that you found. And then you link that to different parts of your life, and then you talk about that with the facilitator, and that can be really revealing. And it just makes you think, who are you? What are the good things in your life? What are the things you're really struggling with? And it just, I don't know, it just crystallizes it in front of you and makes it really clear in a way that it wouldn't do before, because you just think about that.
The word that I've been thinking of ever since you started describing what it is kind of like metaphors, really, I guess. And just the horse as a metaphor, the horse as a horse, obviously, but also the horse as a metaphor, like a living representation of nature and power and things you can't control, or perhaps you can with the right lessons and so on. And then the field as, the field, but your life or your environment and those kinds of things, and then various objects, and then various interactions between you and the horse and the environment. Just feels like I love a metaphor. So this is really doing it for me in metaphor terms.
Yes,
I would say.
I think they're really powerful, aren't they?
Really. I mean, I've always used metaphors in all my work, but the metaphors in my coaching are starting to really kind of take on a life of their own in a big way. But that's for another day. So
I want to know about that now. I'm like, oh no, come
on. I'll tell you after.
All right.
So what I'm hearing now is this, like, I feel like you've been on this journey. You started off coaching with horses, not coaching horses, but coaching with horses. And then you've come through into a different kind of coaching now. How was what you learned as an equine coach kind of transferred over into your human coaching?
That is a very good question. And I think about my equine coaching days often. I would say that a lot, because sometimes, I have self-diagnosed ADHD and ASD. And so I think I've moved around my jobs a lot. And, when I was younger, especially because I'm quite old, that wasn't seen as a particularly good thing, right? I mean, I'm 25 now, so, I've been around a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah, see, there you go. So it's, that was seen as quite a negative thing. But actually, one of the things that I can see now that I look back at my grand old age of 25, and I look at all the things I've been involved in my life, I've taken something from every single job that I've had, every single experience that I've had, and it's brought me to where I am now. And I have lots of experience of neurodivergence across my whole life in different ways that as part of my world as being an ADHD coach, it informs everything that I do. One of the big things I think that I've brought forward from that is ways of regulating. And I know I'm going to be doing a seminar soon, aren't I, on body-based practices and, centered coaching, and how, as humans, we need to use our bodies. We can use our bodies to help us regulate. It's not, coaching isn't just all about the mind. It's about the mind and body connection. And I think, the world is kind of opening up its eyes to that a little bit more in recent days. I think we're starting to understand that you can't just sit and talk about it, that there's sometimes a physical reaction that happens, and we only have to reflect in the animal kingdom to see that happening in real life. The recircling story that I told you, I would see that behavior every single day. And through that reminded me, just helped me to learn that sometimes, you have to move away to keep yourself safe. You can't get stuck in patterns that are unhealthy. You can't get stuck in places that are unhealthy, because you need to look after yourself. That's what a horse does first and foremost. The other things to think about with movement is things like horses will snort or yawn, or they have these sort of biological functions to help their biological functions reach homeostasis, which is kind of like, regular level. And horses are programmed, their normal is moving forward all the time. And so, have you ever seen a horse when it's let out of a stable that it's been in for a long time? They fly, they go. If you let them out down the field, when I was a teenager, I used to be at stables, and we used to have to walk the horses up a lane. So they'd been in the stables all day, which now I really find that difficult, because when you understand that horses are made to move forward all the time, the idea of locking them up, it just takes your brain into a whole new place. And I'm quite uncomfortable with it now, as I am with horse racing, but don't get me started on that. Anyway, we used to take the horses out the stable and they'd be trotting, they'd be like the energy that they would have within them. You could feel it. It was palpable. And we would walk them as little teenagers up the lane a few paces, not very far, and then we'd let them into the field. And my goodness me, the energy and the beauty that you get to see when they're finally released from that cave, that trapped feeling, whoosh, off they go, and they would fly out the field. I won't tell you the story about when I tried to ride one of them bareback up to the top of the field and how I ended up with a hoof print on my back. That's another story. That's for over a few beers at some point. But yeah, they're just unreleased. They're just like whoosh, off they go, free, and then they just kind of chill out and go and eat some grass. And that's how they regulate, They're kind of like, this is a really hard situation. There's a red bucket in the field and I'm scared. It could eat me. And then they move through a set process of events to get to a point of regulation. And so I learned a lot about watching that cycle, all the time, and how, things like how you have to advocate for yourself comes into that, right? Because nobody else is looking after the horse. They're looking after themselves. And so you need to make sure that you are mindful of what's going on around you. But if an experience happens to you that's traumatic, let's say with a little t, so sort of, nothing major we're talking about here, just a little thing, but it did stir you and it did make you feel unsafe. Well, what are you going to do to regulate yourself again? How are you? Nobody else is doing that for you.
So if the red bucket was RSD,
yeah,
something, the red bucket was like contained RSD.
Yeah.
I don't know I hope this metaphor is going to work.
Yes, it does.
If I was the horse, I would see it and I'd feel something. And
Yeah.
I'd be like, or maybe it triggered RSD rather than being RSD.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've seen the red bucket. I'm feeling some rejection sensitivity or criticism or some kind of fearful type of reaction.
Yeah.
And as a human, what's the equivalent of the circling movement, would you say?
I think that's what we do in coaching, isn't it? With our ADHD coaching a lot. And I work with, pretty much every client I've worked with ADHD. We talk about RSD at some point to different degrees. Yeah. And I think, one of the first things I would say with RSD is the first thing is to be aware that RSD exists. I think most of my clients only discover RSD when they come and have sessions with me. So first of all, knowing that that's what's happening inside you releases you from the shame of thinking that you're crazy, because that's what it feels like to some people, doesn't it? And they think, I'm abnormal, I shouldn't be experiencing this. So recognizing it, I think, is number one. And then going on from that, I would say, working on reframing strategies. And that's what I do with my clients, is we look at different scenarios that you may experience. So let's say they were ghosted by text or something. That's one of the ones that I look at with people. Well, why has that happened? And then we start to look at it and we unpick it a little bit. And then we can realize that maybe it's not because people hate us, it's because their phone ran out of battery, or they couldn't see us for a week and they just didn't know when to put us in the diary and they were overwhelmed, and so they just didn't reply. Oftentimes we think it's about us, don't we? And actually it's not really very often about us. So I think for me, the moving away thing is kind of like being mindful of RSD, kind of assessing it, and then putting in strategies to keep us safe. So in the horses sense, they will figure out the strategies, which is the recircling. They will deem that that's safe, and then they will go and regulate. And so we need to do the same. I have one client who, when they have RSD, when RSD kind of bites them, they kind of really feel it quite deeply. And so what they've decided to do is to stomp. That's what they find is helpful. Now, that can be quite challenging if they're in the workplace, but sometimes they work from home and that's a bit easier. But what they've done alongside the stomping is they've come up with a Spotify playlist. They've made their own playlist that with that kind of music that gets it out of their system. So they're doing a bit like the horse does, where they're recircling backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And eventually they will get to that homeostasis, that kind of regulated state they want to be in. Because nobody wants to live with RSD. Nobody wants to feel that stuff because it's hard. And so it's developing those strategies. And I would say, horses tend to do similar kind of things. But for humans, we all need different things at different times. And depending on the situation, don't we? How I deal with my RSD would be probably very different maybe from anybody else that has it. So it's A, knowing it exists, and B, developing your own strategies. And of course, that's where coaches can be super helpful, because they may have ideas that you can't think of yourself.
Absolutely. You mentioned body work earlier on, and that idea of bringing the body into the coaching. And I think all of us are thinking about that more and more, especially with our ADHD clients who have kind of physical feelings and physical things going on, maybe hyperactivity or maybe, tics, or just the use of the body, but the feeling of emotion in different parts of the body and those kinds of things. It's like, now I genuinely believe you can't coach without bringing all that stuff in. So I wonder if we could spend the last little few minutes just thinking about any regulating tips for people. Emotional dysregulation, RSD, any of those things that kind of bring us into that state of like seeing the red bucket. What can we do to kind of calm everything down?
I think the first thing to do is to reflect. So often we will have regulating strategies built into our life that we've created for ourselves without realizing it. So often with clients, I'll ask them to kind of tell me of a situation where they felt RSD has kicked in, or anxiety, or whatever we might be talking about. And how do you feel better? How do you make yourself feel better is basically what it comes down to. And so sometimes you'll find people will say, well, I'll go for a walk. That's a really good one. And again, it's got movement in it and you're out in nature, like a total win-win. And so then you can kind of take that and go, okay, so if you're feeling RSD at work, where you can't go for a walk, willy-nilly kind of thing, how can you use that walking strategy in work? And so you may come up with a strategy like, well, I'll go and walk around the office for a bit and say hello to people, or not say hello to people, depending on what you need, or I'll go out for a coffee break and just walk up and down the street for a minute, So I think the first thing is reflecting, look back, see what strategies you might have in your life already that you can redeploy in a new way in your situation. So I think that's really, really a key one. I do think coaching is brilliant, and I think you can bring anything to your coach if your coach is good enough, and your coach will have lots of other strategies that you can have. My clients use lots of things from music. If music is important and works for you, you can create playlists for different times of day, for different ways you're feeling. I mean, literally anything. So that music's a really good one. There's also lots of little physical movements that you can do. So like butterfly taps, if you tap on your collarbone, that can be really calming. But obviously, if you don't want to sit in the office and do that. See, you're calm now, Lewis. You see Lewis, he's gone like, oh, going to have a nap now. You can give yourself a hug. It's really simple, but you can just hug yourself.
I share that with a lot of my clients.
Yeah.
Just hold your arms, I say, hold your arms.
Yeah. It's so simple. And I know the havening technique, they rub, don't they? I don't know a lot about the havening technique, but I know that, so that can be calming. And it's interesting because all of those things are very kind of loving yourself, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately for a lot of us, we've grown up not loving ourselves as much as we should. So really, that's a key focus, tipping that scale to actually loving yourself. And alongside that comes things like, well, if you had a friend that came to the door with the same problem that you're wrestling with, what would you say to your friend? Would you say, oh, don't be so silly, you're making it all up, love, and send them on their way? No, of course you wouldn't. That internal voice that some of us have had growing up, where it's like, oh, come on, just get over it, just deal with it. We would never say that to anyone else. And so that can be a really good way of reframing things, is thinking, hang on a minute, if my best friend came in here and sat with that, or anybody actually, a stranger, I wouldn't ever say that to. If they came to sit at my kitchen table, what would I say to them? And then turn that inwards to yourself. Come on, you're doing the best you can with what you've got here. It's okay to feel like that. What are we going to do to move on from that? Are we going to do some butterfly taps? Are we going to go for a walk? Are we going to listen to some music? Are we going to stomp our feet? Loads of people love exercise. I said the word. I'm a bit scared now. I'm not a big exercise. Anyway, some people love boxing. I did do boxing for a while, and that was really good because you can literally thump it out. Good old Taylor Swift. You can shake it off. Shaking your hands can be a great way to relieve tension and stress. I had some tricky family news before the summer holidays, and it was quite significant tricky family news. And I didn't actually know what to say to people. I couldn't formulate it into words, and I couldn't even text people, which is very unlike me because I do love a text. And I could feel it inside me hanging, and I was just like, what are you going to do? You've got to do something. And so I'd been doing some work with a movement coach, which is another brilliant thing to do. I have an amazing movement coach. And she taught me just to do anything. It doesn't have to be a formulated dance or movement or exercise even. You don't have to go to a Pilates class or go to the gym for an hour. You can stand in your kitchen, put some music on and just do a kitchen disco and just move and swing, and twist your body and make yourself big, move your arms around, all of that stuff. And that is how I regulated in that moment when I couldn't even use words to speak out what I was thinking and feeling. And that was really powerful. So there's a lot to be learnt in this area. And I think, we're only seeing the beginning of it really, Esther.
I love that idea that we've kind of looped back round to the horses again, because you're regulating yourself without words.
Yeah, it is. That's what it is. I think, there's loads of people you can follow online and different exercises you can do. And I'm going to be doing a workshop on it soon, aren't I, for BCAT. So I'm excited about that. And I think in there may be over 20 different exercises that we're going to try. Tiny little things, not big things. But movement is really important. And I think it has a really strong place in coaching because I think we need to be holistically looking at body and mind, It's really important.
Totally. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all your amazing horse coaching stories.
Amazing. Really opened my eyes. I didn't even know it was a thing until I sat down for this podcast. So
yeah, there's a lot we can learn.
On it.
Oh, that's good. There's a lot to learn from the animal kingdom. They can teach us a lot about how they use their bodies. So yeah,
it's that thing that we've lost our instincts, haven't we? Even just breathing.
Yeah,
we have to learn how to breathe in a way, don't we?
We do. I went to an osteopath a few years ago because my back was giving me problems, and she's like, "Take a deep breath," and I just kind of went. She's like, "No, take a deep breath," and I was like, "What? I can breathe deeper than that?" Like I had no idea. And actually, when you do that, it affects your lymphatic drainage system. It affects your muscles. It's near your heart. We have lost a lot along the way. If you read the book, if you want a book to read, Peter Levine has a book called In an Unspoken Voice, and he talks a lot about that. It's a brilliant, brilliant book. and how important it is to move your body. We've got a lot to learn.
Amazing. We've got a lot to relearn.
Yeah.
It's true.
We'll put a reminder of that book title
Yeah.
down underneath.
We'll link the bio. We'll also put the link to your bolt-on webinar, or just the webinar. It's on the bottom of this as well. We'll get James to do that.
Yeah, the more the merrier. Get everybody in.
Damn right.
Gill, thank you so much for sharing all that amazing coaching journey with us.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. And opened all of our eyes, I think.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Amazing.
Lovely.
Right. Don't forget to like and subscribe, everyone. Put what you thought down in the comments, and Jill's links will be in the description. Thank you all for watching.
See you next time.